Hey guys, what's up? So I was at Micro Center, as I am usually, and they have a section there where they have returns and open box parts that have been opened and returned, or have been sitting on the shelf or in the back for a while, and they sell it for a reduced price. And that's usually the section you can find me in, getting crazy deals on computer parts that have no reason to be as cheap as they are. And when I was there recently, about a week ago, I stumbled across something that I was like, why would they be selling this so late? Who is returning it at this point? Why is it here? And that was a Vega 56 Red Dragon Edition. Well, more importantly, a Vega 56. Why would they have a Vega 56 basically new? It's, in box, open box, after all this time. And it was a return part, and I was like, $159.99, that's what it was listed for, open box, $159.99. I should get that. That looks like a good deal, and it would make a pretty good video. And I've never actually had a Vega 56. I've had some Vega 64s, and I have a couple ones on the shelf up there, but I've never had a 56. And I wanted to see, is the Vega 56 still good for gaming? Is this a good part for your money? Now, I paid $159.99 plus 8% New York sales tax. It was like $174, which I thought was a pretty good deal. Then I realized that's basically around what you can pay for them on eBay, 180, 200 something bucks. And, that's actually a pretty decent price. So, for that money, is this a good value, the Vega 56? I have the Red Dragon Edition, which is considered to be one of the better cards, usually. The power color is kind of like the EVGA of AMD. And, now, before we get into the benchmarks and such, I do want to just point out a couple things about this card. It's weird. First of all, it's huge. It looks cool, though, and being a big card is not necessarily a bad thing. But there's something really weird about this card that I have no explanation for. I literally do not know why they chose to do this. Notice this card is very long, obviously. So you would think the actual physical card in which the GPU was on would actually be long, like the heatsink. It isn't. The card itself, the PCB, ends here. Halfway through the card. You can see the power connectors are actually in the middle of the card, because that's where the PCB ends. This, I cannot understand why they would make it like this. Like, I get extending the cooler past the edge of the PCB to get some extra cooling. They have heat pipes that transfer heat to the end of the card, where one of the fans, that isn't even on top of anything except for fins, gets, rid of heat effectively. But it's such a tiny PCB, and that's where I'm so confused. It's like the size of the R9 Nano. So, I saw that after opening it, and I was like, why, again? Because power connectors would go in, like, the middle of the card. That's really weird to me, but that's really it. That's all I noticed. Besides that, it's a pretty bog-standard Vega 56. It's not the blower style, so it's definitely going to perform a lot better than stock, and you can definitely find these on eBay for pretty decent deals. So, for the price I paid, the price was, after tax. Yes, tax, that thing that does indeed exist. Believe it or not, big YouTubers. This was about $174. Now, I'm going to round that up to 200%. I paid $200. Let's say I bought on eBay a used card for $200. Is the Vega 56 a good value? Well, let's find out. We're going to get into some games and see how it performs in some modern games, some little older games, but games that people would still be playing now. Games that I'm still playing now. I don't know about you, but that's the point. Let's get into the numbers, because I am excited to use this card. It just looks so nice. I might keep it for myself, though. That's a lie. I'm probably going to sell it. So our first game takes us to Warzone. And, it looks like we had a little bit of a, texture glitch here. Now, this is actually not the fault of the card. This is the fault of the game being, terrible, as usual, and having to install shaders every single time I launch the game, and updating all the time. So this has happened before. I've had it happen on my 1080 Ti's. This is actually a rather common thing to happen, for me at least. But, besides that, getting into the game, and we see FPS in the average and around between 100 and 150 FPS, averaging around 120-ish FPS in game. This card does amazing. It's, you know, even at the point where it's at 100%, it only stays around 60, you know, 50 to 60 degrees Celsius at the whole time, and there's definitely room for some overclocking on this card, and even, I bet I could probably flash a BIOS onto it of a Vega 64, which a lot of people have done to get that extra performance. But besides that, this card is great for Warzone. If you can find a deal for 200 bucks, you know, 200 bucks is like the cost of a brand new RX 580 or 1660. This card blows them out of the water. This is an insane, for the price, this is insane performance, and I would be happy to recommend this card if you're playing Warzone, because it definitely shreds these frames in this game. Alright, so moving on to Hitman 2, and this is 1080p, ultra settings, max, anti-aliasing on max, everything on max, except for resolution scale, because then we're just running at a different resolution at that point. And one quick thing, you'll see that there is a Titan X Pascal little thing in my MSI Afterburner. That's because I was using the card to record. I wanted to make sure there was very little impact on the system performance from the recording software, so I actually added a secondary graphics card, an NVIDIA Pascal card, to encode just as a dedicated encoding card for recording, and that definitely helped the system to, you know, handle the recording better. But that's the point. So the Vega 56, honestly, in this game performs well. I actually had trouble at some point, especially where there were more characters in the screen. As you know, the more characters there tend to be, it's logic, it's CPU power, etc. I actually had trouble loading the card to 100% at some points. But when it was loaded to 100%, we got around 70 FPS. The card again stayed cool. I don't think I have to say that every time. It's obviously going to stay cool. It's got that beefy heatsink on it. But I mean, it performs fine. You know, for this test, this mission, for maximum settings 1080p, this is a very graphically intensive game. And if this thing can run max settings 1080p and still somehow make the CPU the bottleneck, this is a great card. And again, for like 220 bucks, something like that, whatever you can get it for used, definitely a great deal for this card, especially for games like this. Alright, moving right along to Far Cry 5. Now, here's the deal with Far Cry 5. First of all, I don't think the game really likes Radeon graphics cards, which is weird because when you start the game, you get a Ryzen/Radeon logo in the beginning, which is, again, weird because I've had it always run worse on my Radeon cards. Your mileage may vary, that's just what I've experienced. But you'll notice this card has 8 GB of HBM2 VRAM. It's good, it's fast VRAM, high bandwidth memory is what that stands for, but it's running out. It's using all 8 GB of VRAM, and this is at 1080p maximum settings with HD textures turned on. Now, HD textures obviously loads the VRAM a lot more. You could turn that off and save a couple gigs, but for the sake of just having it in the test, turning HD textures on runs us right out of VRAM. We actually had the same issue when we did our Crossfire Vega 64 test, where I ran out of VRAM in this game, so I had to turn off HD textures for both sides. And the same situation's here, but I mean, besides that, the card runs fine. You know, it's still at 98% usage, so we're definitely up against the limit of the card, and we're getting like 50 to 70 FPS anyway. So definitely performs fine for, you know, what it is, but it's something to consider if you want a really nice looking game and maybe you want to play at a higher resolution. You may run out of VRAM if the game has HD textures like Far Cry 5 does.
It's fucking killing me.
Alright, moving on to Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, I did start on the balance preset, and we're getting about 60 to 80 FPS, which was fine, but I turned it down to the highest favor performance preset, because I want to see kind of what we could fully achieve with this card. This game is very GPU bottlenecked in every way. It's just it's run so inefficiently, and it always is just 100% GPU usage. I've had it be 100% GPU usage on minimum settings, so you know this will definitely test your GPU this game. So on the favorite performance, again, the highest one, not the like lowest possible settings, but you know, I ran into town and you know, went into a bar and just had some friendly bar conduct, and we're getting 100 FPS. There's nothing else to say. I mean, this is a heavily GPU bottleneck game, and this card is performing great, which is surprising because there's a lot of people who rip on the Vega 56 because it's really just a 64 that they kind of clocked down, disabled some cores or something, and that's really it. But this card is performing amazing, and again, it's staying cool. I know I don't have to mention that, but man, this card is awesome. Again, the gameplay kind of speaks for itself here. This is a great card, especially for the price you can find them at. Alright guys, so last but certainly not least, we do have GTA 5, which is a older game, but Rockstar is going to keep dragging its dead body through the mud, so we're going to keep benchmarking it in these videos, and of course it performs fine. This is 1080p, maximum possible settings, everything's fine. You know, it's above 100 FPS, you know, what do you expect? It's a Vega 56, the card performs great, stays cool, quiet. If you can find this card for about 200 bucks, I recommend it. It is a good card. The Vega 56, it's always been kind of, you know, hidden. People kind of forget about it. But, I mean, for the price of a new RX 580 or even like a 1660 Super, I definitely recommend going for the Vega 56. It is a great card. Sometimes there's some driver issues, you know, Vega cards, but for me, I had no issues whatsoever. This was an amazing experience. This was an amazing card for me to use, and I was happy to play with it. So I'm going to leave you guys with this little last GTA gameplay of me just, you know, driving around and getting these benchmarks. That's the point. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys kind of enjoyed. Vega 56, recommended. Love you guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.